r/NuclearRevenge. First story. My performance review that became my manager's performance review. Lots of folks over at r/ProRevenge suggested I post this. To summarize what happened, I was the top salesperson by a large margin at a location that was vastly underperforming. My sales manager accused me of lying in front of the VP. I proved I wasn't lying. I then put out 2 more facts of information, and as a result she was fired as a result of my performance review. Enjoy. I hope it fits. Guys, I know this is long, but I assure you, this is a juicy one. I was working with a B2B sales company. We sold services to companies basically, and this company had managed to hire the most incompetent, lazy, and jealous sales manager I have ever come across. We were a team of 5 salespeople and a sales manager. All 5 of us salespeople hated our sales manager for various reasons, but we liked her personally. I was the top salesperson on the team. I was sitting at 170% of my yearly objective and was well on my way to President's Club. This is largely because I was the only salesperson on the team with real sales experience and the sales manager was too incompetent to train a team. So my VP came down for our yearly performance reviews, and I was called in first. It was my VP and Mrs. B, short for bitch. I was expecting a positive performance review. Right off the bat Mrs. B hits me with sting. You know our location hasn't been performing at objective for a number of years, and we suspect this is because salespeople are misrepresenting their daily work. I'm taken back. Sting, I don't think you are actually doing what you say you are doing in your CRM. This is something that could get you fired. I looked at Mrs. B and I said, really? She said, yeah. I hit her back with, I'm shocked you decided to go this route. Mrs. B with a confident smile said, we gotta do what it takes to get this location on objective. I said, alright, let's play a game, Mrs. B. Pick a day, any day in the CRM and let me prove to you that I went to all my appointments and did all my stops as recorded. Well Sting, I'm not saying you never go in the field. I just think some days you stay at home and put in BS notes in the CRM. I said, Mrs. B, pick a day, any day. Pick a day you think I lied about my sales activities. So Mrs. B picks a day. Now I'm smiling ear to ear, and I'm fucking heated right now. I notice the VP is smiling at me, and his head is slanted to one side. I suspected he knew Mrs. B was about to get absolutely fucking owned, and he was right. So she gives me the day, and I turn to the VP. Mr. VP, are you aware of how Android phones work? VP responds, enlighten me. I said, by default Android has location services turned on, and in fact Google will track where you went and when. Naturally I carry my phone everywhere, so let's compare what Google says I did that day to what my CRM says. So I pull up my Google location services for that day, and surprise surprise is a match. Mrs. B is obviously very concerned at this point. I said, I'm actually quite enjoying this performance review. Let's pick another day, Mrs. B. Mrs. B fires back, we don't need to do that. I turn to the VP. Mr. VP, would you mind picking a day? He says, sure, what about this? He pulls up my CRM. I pull my location services for that day. Guess what? It's a match. I then get ready to pull out the big guns. Mr. VP, do you remember companies with a contract value of excess of $1 million that we lost recently? Yes Sting, I remember. Apparently our competitor won them over on price. We can't win them all. Mr. VP, here is an email from their VP basically stating that they've decided not to go with us for our failure to provide 3 samples for them to decide on which product worked best for them. Sting, can you forward that to me? Sure, not a problem, Mr. VP. Forward it over. Mr. VP, well, I'm at this. Let me forward you over several email chains before this where I clearly asked Mrs. B to order those samples. In fact, in those very same email chains she confirmed that had in fact ordered the sample. He asked me to forward those emails to him, so I did. Now Mr. VP, I had our service department look to see if any orders had been placed for those samples. No orders were actually placed. He said, I'm going look into this. Mrs. B is fucking sweating motherfucking bullets at this point. My performance review has just turned into her performance review and shit's not going right. Mr. VP, I have one more thing I'd like to bring to your attention. Do you mind if I step outside for a minute so I can show you? He said, sure. I need to have a talk with Mrs. B anyway. Now I need to mention that several years prior to this a general manager at another location raped a woman. The company was sued and lost a lot of money because of this. Since this incident, the company put in a very clear-cut policy: no sexual relations between management and people who work for them. It's immediate termination for the manager. Now another sales consultant in the office was named Joe. Joe was a married man with 2 beautiful kids, and Mrs. B had the hots for him. She tried to have sex with him multiple times, twice on text. Joe and I had talked about if he should report this transgression. I walked into the sales office and said, "Joe, I think it's time we get a new sales manager. You got those texts?" He looks at me and goes, "Is today going be the day?" I said, "Today is going be the day." All the sales staff knew what was going on. The mood in the office was lifted. Joe and I begin walking back to the conference room when the location manager, who was not a part of the performance review, saw Joe and I. He asked what's going on, and Joe said, "You're going need to hire a new sales manager soon." Location manager was confused. He said he's coming into the meeting. We said fine. I knocked on the door. Mr. VP said come on in, so I did. There we stood, Joe, myself, and the location manager. Mrs. B knew exactly what was about to happen. We all took our seats, and I asked the VP, "Mr. VP, I just want to clarify a company policy. Sure, is it true that if a manager tried to engage in a sexual relationship with a direct report, that it's immediate termination for that manager?" Mr. VP sits up straight, takes a moment and goes, "Yes, if something like that came to my attention, my hands would be tied. I'd have to fire the manager." I said, "Well, Joe has something he wants to show you." Mrs. B got up and walked out of the conference room. She was about to cry, you could tell. Her world, her career, had just completely wrecked, and I don't think she wanted to be around for the end. Joe went on to tell the VP how he's a happily married man with 2 beautiful kids, and Mrs. B kept hitting on him. In fact, she had sent him numerous sexual texts, and on 2 occasions openly invited him to come have sex with her, once in the office, and once at his home, even after he had made it clear he wasn't going have sex with her. Mr. VP asked to see the texts and Joe provided them. The VP asked him to screenshot those and email those over. Joe said he would. Then the VP said, "I'm going. Need both of you to go back to the sales office. The location manager and I have some talking to do." We walk back into the sales office. I noticed the sales manager office had looked cleaned out. Apparently Mrs. B was bawling. She was a wreck and crying, and said she was going home. Joe laughed and said, "Yay, she won't be coming back." It was about 20 to 25 minutes when the VP came into the sales office and asked me to come to the conference room again, so I did. I sat down and the VP said, "Well, I would like to inform you that Mrs. B has been terminated effectively immediately. With this being said, after your performance review and looking over your numbers, you are our top sales rep in this location and deserve nothing short of stellar remarks on your review, and you'll be getting that." I said, "Thank you. I do have one question." He said, "Sure, anything. How do I apply for new sales manager job that just opened up?" Mr. VP laughed and said, "You sure do. You like to strike while the iron is hot, don't you?" I said, "I do." He said he would let the location manager know and I'd be able to put in my application. I thanked him and he said, "No, thank you. In my 35 years of being in sales and sales management, that was by far the most interesting performance review I have ever witnessed." I did not end up getting promoted. I ended up quitting shortly after this. Because they decided to not promote me and instead hired a guy with no sales experience to be our sales manager, and this rubbed me the wrong way. Also, our service department sucked and couldn't deliver on what I was selling, and another company offered me more money. Second story. I'm the Padawan. My dad is the master. Back in 1991. My dad bought my mom a brand new Chevy Caprice. You know, the big, ugly, fat as a whale cop car. It was white, with fake mesh wheels and white wall tires. My mother loved it. She had it 2 weeks and kept it parked in front of our house in SoCal. The guy across the street was a contractor. Back in 1991. That basically meant shady douchebag that hired illegals that stood outside Home Depot. Shady douche started remodeling a house up the street from us on our side of the road. They were doing some stucco work. At the end of the day, his workers decided to just dump the leftover stucco in the gutter and try to hose it down the street. It got all over my mom's tires. She didn't notice, drove off, and it went all over the passenger side of her car. My dad wasn't happy. Not 1. But he went across the street to talk to the contractor neighbor. My dad is a 6'3" Air Force Vietnam Purple Heart recipient. He has fired a weapon in anger. Neighbor was a 5'4" asshole with an attitude. Dad goes over and explained the situation, actually keeping his calm. He asks the guy to have the stucco removed from the car. The neighbor tells my dad to go fuck himself. I'm expecting my dad at this point to kill said neighbor. Instead, he says, okay, and walks back across the street. He has my mom's car detailed, and that's that. 7 years later, my dad and I are watching a lacquer game, and it's about 10 at night and it's halftime. My dad says, I will be right back. He walks out of the house, goes into the garage, and gets 2 1-gallon buckets of paint. He walks across the street and dumps it all over the neighbor's brand new BMW convertible. The neighbor had left the top down because it was in May and the weather was nice in Southern California. So, the entire outside and inside of the BMW is now covered in paint. My dad walks back, puts the paint cans back in the garage, closes the door, and comes back to watch the rest of the game. The next morning, the neighbor comes out and sees his car. We hear him saying out loud to his wife, I don't understand who would have done this. I don't get this at all. He had forgotten all about the stucco. My dad just waited and waited. Fast forward to now. 7 years ago, an asshole down my road hit my dog and killed him, then drove off. I found his hubcap in the road next to my dog and confronted him. Oh, I thought it was a deer. I'm waiting for a really nice day. The paint is ready in my basement. Edit. Holy shit. My first ever award. Thanks. I'll have to look for other subs for stories from my dad. He was a wicked hippie man whore. His life could make for several fascinating books. Edit again. Thanks to this post, I watched both John Wick movies. I love Daisy the Beagle. I think now I must up the ante on my revenge. The person who hit my dog did so with his work van. I must render it inoperable, so his business takes a hit.